All right, here we are. We're sitting in my car right now because this is probably the best place for me to do this video. My house had many background noises. It wouldn't have been nice. So excuse my spooky, shadowy presence, but maybe it'll add to the effect. So somebody responded to my Instagram post and said they want to know about the first time I went shark fishing from shore. That's a pretty fun story. That takes place over the course of like 2 or 3 days, and it had like a little bit of everything. Probably the worst thing that happened to somebody, the weirdest thing that happened to somebody, the coolest thing that happened to somebody, and an epic night of fishing. Also, I authenticated this story by accident. I couldn't remember it right, or at least I thought I couldn't, so I had to reach out to a guy that was there. We're going to leave him unnamed at the moment, but it was an old friend of mine. I had asked him, I basically ran the story across as I remembered it, and he said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. It's definitely that year, and I'll show you guys the message. Obviously, the number's going to be out of it, but pretty cool. So, without further ado, we're going to get into it. This brings us back to July 2013. My friend and I, we were plugging for striped bass, or at least that's what we were hoping for. Really, we would go for anything. I had a Shimano Tiroleo with me, I think, and a Shimano Talus. I don't know what my friend had, but we had all that crap. We were throwing plugs, throwing whatever, and we get to this part of our local inlet, and we just start walking the beach, and we see like a fire in the distance, like, you know, a little fire pit. And at the time, you have to understand, the world is not like it is now. Nobody did this. This was weird. The fact that me and this dude were doing this was like alone. You didn't see anybody on the beach. I mean, yeah, people fished, obviously, everybody fished, but to the extent where it is today, where you would see a mass of people on the beach at night, and this is not a four-wheel beach, this is a regular beach. I'm saying it now because in comparison, it's much different. Moving on. We saw this fire, and it was just a group of kids by the time we got to them, which was like 30 minutes later. And they had a frozen bunker. And they were just slamming these brown sharks. I mean, like, back to back to back to back to back. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was jaw-dropping. That's definitely where the addiction started. And before that, we've fished on the beach with chunks, and sharks would probably pick up our baits because these things would run, and then pop us off every time. But we're watching these kids do it, and they're just throwing these chunks into this deep part of the inlet. And they're like in a line catching all these sharks, but only in one specific spot, which now we understand why. So we're just sitting there, we're chatting with them, we're talking, and I think we end up fishing. And I could not catch one for the life of me. Everybody else was. My friend was, all the kids, however many of them there were, 3 or 4 of them, they were all catching, and it was mind-blowing to me. At this point, my Tiroleo was down, and my Talus was in the rod holder. I ate a piece of frozen bunker from these guys' flats on the hook. And I don't know. Nothing was happening. I watch all these sharks come in. I'm helping these guys drag some in. I'm helping them unhook them. I don't even know if we unhooked them, actually. I think we just cut them at the time. I mean, what are you going to do? Not the best thing. Not really what you should do, but it's what happened. And it was just epic. I never seen sharks like this, especially this close to the really backwaters of our area. It was incredible to us. I was probably, 16? No, because we drove, so 17. I was 17 years old. And then I remember, I just don't want to repeat myself, but I'm trying to be accurate here. I remember I then got a hit. And I was like, yes, finally I got my shark. And my reel went off. I had my Shimano Bait Runner 6000 that a girl that I went to prom with got for me as a gift. How cool is that? So this reel starts going, right? I see the rod, you know, the reel, and then I see the rod tip start to, just twinkle around, I guess. I point it at the water, and the reel goes and goes and goes, and then I close it up, and then I hook this fish, and, I want to catch the shark, but it's not like I'm thinking it was, I don't know, a 42-inch bass. That's what it was. We fought this fish. We get it up to the beach, and then my friend goes, "It's a bass!" And I couldn't believe it. In the middle of this shark bite, where there was probably about 24 sharks caught and another dozen broken off, we got a bass that was like 20 pounds that just floated around and took a chunk. I'll show you a picture of him here. I mean, he looked a little wacky, I'll give you that. But what balls. So that was the really cool thing that is totally memorable about my first time shark fishing from shore. I will never forget that because it will probably never happen again in the midst of a shark bite. Before I get to our second trip, I want to just tell you another story within a story. So these kids that we were fishing with, this is the part that I referred to in my story, and this is the part where it's the worst thing that could ever happen to you. So these kids we're fishing with, one of them has a brand new rod and reel setup that he tells us is like $600-700. I don't know, whatever it is. And he's got it in the rod holder, and he's like, "Yeah, this thing is great. Oh my God, I paid so much money for it. It's the best thing ever." And I kid you not, I promise you I could corroborate this. I will get multiple people if I could find these guys, but one of them I have his phone number and I will ask, and he could corroborate this. The rod in this rod holder freaking flew out. A fish, I guess a shark, picked up his bait. The rod bent over and it shot out of the rod holder like a rocket. Right as this kid was bragging. He was at the end of his sentence or in the midst of bragging on how much money he spent on this combo, and it flies out like a bottle rocket. I mean, we were just cracking up. It was perfect. Yin and yang, black and white cookie, whatever you want to call it, balance right there. That was like some namaste shit. Talk about the worst thing that could ever happen to you on a fishing trip. I mean, it was cool. And again, memorable. Absolutely memorable. You will never forget that. But that pretty much sums up the first night. And that gave us the bug. So my friend and I, we went back to his house the next day. We got all of our hooks together. We got together our leader. We got together our swivels. We got all our gear. We re-spooled. We went to the tackle store and re-spooled. I remember what he was using now. He was using a Cat Max with an old Shimano bait runner where you slap the back of it. We took it to the store, and I think he put like 65 or 80 pound test on, and I beefed mine up to like 50. But 50 from 30, mind you. Ah, wait, that's not even right. That's not right at all. I'm sorry. Take that part out. That was about a year later. So the story is accurate other than the spooling. We went back to his house and we got all our tackle together and we started making rigs up with Gamakatsu octopus hooks, 10-0 octopus hooks. I was using 240 toothproof wire, toothproof wire, and barrel swivels. Probably Spro, I would imagine. I just got done, or was still working at Bay Park Fishing Station at the time, so Mark was kind of guiding me in the right direction as to what to use at the time. Not specifically for this trip, just in the general sharking universe. So I kind of had an idea how to do these things. I was making my haywire twists and making rigs that were substantial enough to catch these fish. I wasn't using mono yet. I'll admit that. I didn't have any shock leader on, so it was just miserable the amount of fish we would break off. I mean, we'd scratch our heads why. But so we got all prepared. Next day, I don't know if there's any like statutes of limitations on this, but I gotta tell the story as it is, right? So the next day, or the day after, whichever one it was, that's why I say a 2 or 3 day span. We get the rigs in the car. We get a bunch of bunker in my Playmate cooler. We filled it with crushed ice from Bay Park. And we threw the bunker in there, and I got a bucket of bunker chum, a 5-gallon bucket of bunker chum. And we stuck this thing in the ice. And then we did our thing, and then later that night I picked up my buddy, and we drove down to the spot. And we unloaded the car, had all our stuff. He had his Cat Max with him. I know this time he did. I had my stuff with me, just the Talus this time. That's all. That's a lie. I had the Talus, and then I had a Tiroleo with the Battle on it. And then I had a backpack that might have been a seat. I know he had something too. And then we had bug clothing with us because the bugs were so bad. We had to like wear jackets and pants and like a head cover. And then obviously the bucket of chum, and he had his stuff, and we humped this stuff about 1.5 miles. Maybe not, maybe like 1.25 miles to the spot. But it was a while. You're sweating, you're hot and miserable, getting bit by bugs. But we get there, and we take this bucket of chum like dumbass kids, and we tie it to a rope, and I put a piece of mono on it. Maybe not even that. I think I just tied a loop around with the mono, and I put a bunch of weights on it to keep it, you know, in somewhat of a general spot. And I walked this thing out in the water after poking a bunch of holes in the bucket, and I just threw it in there on however many ounces, probably like 18, 20 ounces. So it kept moving, and I move it back, move it back. And sure enough, just like the previous times, we get, boom, right into a bite. We're catching a couple of brown sharks, break off more than we can catch without a doubt. And it was a really, really good night. It was to the point of where you would cast out a bait and it would hit the water, you let it sink, you'd wait, and you'd get picked up. Next time, it would sink, you'd wait, get picked up. It was literally lock and load every cast for hours. Hours. Like, you could not hook one. And there was a time where we broke off either so many rigs or I got spooled halfway or something, where we picked up the Talus and we put another rig on there and we casted it out. And on the way in, my friend wanted to fix his cast. So he cast it out, it lands, he reels it in. On the way in, he gets hammered and he just sets up on this fish. And it was crazy. You could not stop him. I mean, these brown sharks, now that I know what I'm looking at, looking back at the situation, I'm understanding that these brown sharks were about 10 feet in front of us the entire time, right past that first dip. There's no way they weren't because of this very reason, too. So after a couple hours, I go back to move the chum bucket, and there's just a rope. There's no bucket, there's no nothing. Just a rope that looks like it's been shredded up. I don't know what happened. I'm not claiming to know what happened, because none of us saw it. But the best thing I could assume is that these brown sharks saw it, grabbed this, started biting it. I don't know, because it was unchecked for a long time. I mean, leave that open to anything. I'm more than willing to believe it just fell out. Who knows? But with a voracious bite like that, I don't know. So we end up fishing until about 4:30 in the morning, 3:30 maybe, and we're heading home after catching probably combined 10, 11 brown sharks, maybe less, but figure I think I got like 4, he got like 6, so maybe 10. That's why I say 10, 11. And I remember getting back in the car, and my friend was showing me this new song. It's not new by any stretch of the imagination. It was new to us, though. It's a Paul Stanley song. And we're driving on the bridge on the way home. We bump fists, and dude, that memory just locked into my brain forever. And I got the bug of just creeping out at night and tossing the baits and wrangling these little predators. I mean, I understood and learned after a while that you couldn't target them, so no longer do I target them. I target legal species of sharks. If it doesn't come around, that's fishing, right? I mean, I can't guess when he's going to come here or there, but they're bycatch that you can't escape, so you may as well enjoy it. And ray fishing, I guess, but certainly not targeting brown sharks, sand tigers, anything like that. Can't. But that is the gist of the first time I had a really good experience shark fishing from shore. I don't know if there's anything I left out. I know there's something else I wanted to tell you, but I'm going to wait for that. I want to cover all my bases here. Oh, we got a pretty big cow nose that night too. Yes, this is a good one. So this cow nose ray. Oh, there's another thing too. So this cow nose ray picks up my friend's bait this very same night. And it just takes off like a train. Now, mind you, I'd never really seen these things before at this time. Maybe once or twice, but not enough to really know anything about them. Somebody else I knew called him a bat ray. I mean, you know, we laughed at him, but like, we didn't know either. So he catches this ray. To be more correct, he's fighting this ray for about 40 minutes in this current. I mean, it was crazy. This thing just ripped his drag and ripped his drag and ripped his drag, and we thought it was a monster shark because if you remember, we were catching sharks all night. So this ray comes in close to shore. Now I'm thinking I'm Steve Irwin here and I have to jump on this thing and, like, you know, with an Australian accent, tape its mouth shut or something. But this thing comes in the wash and it goes on its side. So we see a stingray wing sticking out of the water that we do not know is a stingray. To be correct, a cow nose ray. And we think it's like a giant shark. Not knowing enough to think that a shark that size would just dump his reel and melt it to pieces, but we think it's some monumental sized prehistoric shark that we're going to have to both grab together. And our hearts are coming out of our chest. And then it flips over and we see it's a cow nose. And it's just like, oh, this is really cool, but half relieved and half disappointed. And I can't decide if it was before this ray or after this ray. But we're standing right in this inlet fishing. Definitely towards the end of the trip. And we see a monster shark. Now this is no mistake whatsoever. This is an image burned into my mind. I'm sure many of you have those where you cannot forget what it looks like. And my friend that I'm speaking of this entire story, he was right there with me, and we stared at it and analyzed it for a while. We saw a shark that was, I don't even know, like 7 feet from fin to fin. Sorry, I thought I heard something. Yeah, so this shark was like 7 feet from fin to fin. Obviously, we couldn't see its head. We just saw the dorsal fin, if that's the correct term, down to the tail fin, and we were scratching our heads. We're like, is this 2 of them? There's no way there's a shark this big inside this inlet, this shallow. And at this creepy moon behind it, it was just swimming along and swimming along with the current. I think it came back once, but after that, that was it. But that was a big boy. Whew, we hooked that puppy. It might have been a sand tiger, but I don't know. That didn't look like a sand tiger fin, knowing what I know now. If there's one thing I could ask for, if I could have, you know, a time to go back and be able to really look into a moment, I'd want to look at that moment with my eyes right now and see what that was, because that was an extraordinary thing that we saw that night. Some of you are going to say, oh, what's the big deal, Chris? It's just a shark. Inside this inlet in 2013, this is a big deal. A very big deal. So my first experience sharking was almost religious, as if I was meant to be hooked on this stuff. Multiple memories that are just ingrained. As I said, the worst thing that could happen to you, the best thing that could happen to you, the weirdest thing that could happen to you, and an epic night of fishing. What more could you ask for? Little bonus. The picture of the striped bass that's in this video, when we caught that thing, the kids that were with us took pictures. Took a bunch of pictures. And I want to say about 2 years later, I was on the subway going to this gig. At the time, I was doing some modeling for this company, MMG. And I was going to a gig, and this is crazy to say. I was on the subway, and this kid looks at me, does a double take, and he's like, "Yo, is this you?" Or something to that effect, whips out his phone, pulls out a picture of me holding the bass, and I'm like, "Yeah." And then he's like, yeah, that was us that night with the fire. That was crazy, right? I can't believe it. Like, you were there that night. It's like, I'm surprised I ran into you. I mean, I'm paraphrasing the conversation, but I know I'm remembering correctly in some sense. Now, if you're out there, dude, I'm sorry I don't remember your name, but you got to give me a shout. Message me, email me something. I want to talk about this. We got to do... I sound like some overzealous person right now when I say a video together. I want to do a video with you because I want to see how you remember that night. So if you come across this, praise the Lord. But other than that, I hope this was an extraordinary story for the first time shark fishing from shore. I certainly think it's different. And this was pretty cool to do. I like diving into these memories because I don't just tell you, I relive them. I'm thinking in my head. That's why there's so many pauses. I'm going through the motions and inserting myself into that file cabinet in my brain and really combing through that memory. So as much as you may enjoy listening to this, possibly hate listening to this, that's up to you, I enjoy doing this because I get to really sit here and reflect. I hope you like this story. One of the really cool things about this is I get to unload some things that I never thought I could talk about, that I never used to think was cool. But I'm glad you guys are interested. And if you like what I'm doing on the channel here or attempting to do, give it a subscribe, give it a like, or don't. Other than that, I'll see you all out there. Take care. Oh, and go check out the fishing news with the Fisherman Magazine. Your boy needs some support there. We're doing pretty well. But hey, we could always use new subscribers, right? Keep those reports up. Take care, guys.